the journey of the soul. Before the first breath of time, before the stars cast their shimmering gaze upon the void, the soul was not yet born, yet it was, a flicker of divine thought, waiting to become form, suspended between being and non-being. Plato once wrote that the soul is older than the body, a celestial traveler that has seen countless worlds before this one. In the realm of pure ideas, it danced amidst eternal light, unburdened by the heaviness of matter. It knew the language of harmony, for it was harmony itself, born of divine order, shaped by the rhythm of the cosmos. But even in eternity, there came a whisper, a soft call that rippled through the still waters of existence. Awaken, it said, descend and remember. And thus from the boundless one, sparks of consciousness emerged, each one a reflection of the eternal flame. These were the souls, luminous travelers, destined to explore the labyrinth of creation. The Egyptian sages spoke of this as the coming forth by day, the moment when the divine essence leaves the sea of the infinite to wander through the lands of form. Welcome to the journey back in time. They said the soul descended through 7 gates of light, each one dimming its brilliance slightly until it could take the shape of a mortal life. At every gate, it forgot something. Its wings, its eternal memory, its oneness. By the time it reached the realm of flesh, it had become small, fragile, and vulnerable. But even in its frailty, it carried within it the echo of eternity. Know thyself, whispered the oracle of Delphi. For to know oneself was not merely to know one's name or story, but to remember that ancient origin, the place before places, the light before the world began. In this sacred forgetting, the soul's purpose began. For what meaning would remembrance hold if it were never lost? What beauty would awakening have if there had been no sleep? The ancients knew this paradox well. The Greeks told of Psyche, whose name itself means soul, who was cast from divine favor and made to wander, to suffer, to learn love through pain, until she earned her wings once more. So too does every soul repeat that myth, entering the great dream called life, unaware of its divine inheritance. In the void before the cosmos, the souls gathered like stars not yet lit. They awaited their destinies, their lifetimes, their lessons, their joys and sorrows. Some would become teachers, others seekers. Some would dwell in light, others descend into shadow. But all were bound by one truth, that the journey would lead them home again. The mystics of Egypt said that when a soul descends, Thoth, the keeper of wisdom, writes its name in the book of life. There, beside the eternal flame, the story of each being begins, not with birth, but with a question whispered by the Creator. Will you remember me when you forget yourself? And with that question echoing through its essence, the soul took its first step into time. The silence broke, the stars ignited, the great wheel of existence began to turn. What followed was not merely creation, it was the unfolding of divine curiosity. The universe longed to know itself, and so it became many. And through those countless selves, it began its journey of remembrance. In the eternal library of being, countless souls whispered to one another through ages and worlds, saying, I will meet you again when the veil is lifted. I will remember you when the dream fades. And even now, beyond the noise of the modern world, that whisper can still be heard, faint like the memory of a forgotten lullaby. It calls not to the mind, but to something deeper, ancient, infinite. It calls to you, for you are not a body that happens to have a soul. You are a soul that has chosen to wander in a body, to learn, to break, to love, to remember. And as you sit here listening to these words, something ancient in you stirs, an echo that predates your name, your story, your birth. The whisper before creation is still there, waiting patiently, like a candle in the darkness, reminding you that you are older than the stars. The descent into flesh. When the soul crossed the final threshold, it felt the chill of separation, a subtle shiver that rippled through its once boundless light. For the first time, it could feel weight, density, and limitation. The celestial became earthly. The infinite took shape within a fragile form. The ancients called this the fall into matter, but it was not punishment, it was initiation. In the divine halls of creation, this descent was sacred, a rite of passage. The Egyptians wrote of the Ka and the Ba, twin aspects of the soul, bound together through the dance of life and death. The Ka remained divine, tethered to the heavens, while the Ba descended to walk the earth, to taste the sweetness and bitterness of mortality. Together they formed the bridge between eternity and time. And so the soul entered the human form, a vessel of blood and bone, delicate yet capable of infinite experience. For the first time, it felt the beating of a heart, the rhythm of breath, the pulse of life. It tasted joy and sorrow, light and shadow. But with each heartbeat, it forgot more of what it once knew. The memories of celestial harmony faded into dreams. The light of its origin dimmed beneath the veil of the senses. What was once clarity became mystery. What was once unity became duality. The illusion of I and you, light and dark, life and death. In this forgetting, the soul began its journey as a seeker. Plato spoke of this forgetting in his Phaedrus, describing the soul's fall from the heavens, where it once rode in a chariot beside the gods. But when it lost sight of divine beauty, its wings withered and it fell to earth. There in the body it began again, to learn, to love, to remember. Thus the soul became human, not as a punishment, but as a sacred opportunity. The descent into flesh is not a tragedy, it is the beginning of wisdom. Only through the veil of imperfection can the soul experience the perfection of understanding. Only by forgetting its divinity can it rediscover it with awe. The mystics of every age have spoken of this hidden descent. The Sufis called it the exile of the soul. The Gnostics saw it as the spark trapped within the prison of matter. And Dante, wandering through his infernal vision, understood that the journey downward was but a preparation for the ascent, for no one can reach paradise without first walking through the depths of the self. In the moment of birth, the soul cries, not only for the shock of light and sound, but because it knows that the gates of memory are closing. That cry is both sorrow and promise, a vow to find its way back home, and so life begins. From the first breath, the soul becomes a storyteller, weaving its essence into the threads of time. It learns to speak, to dream, to build, to destroy. It learns love, that most divine illusion, through which it tastes once more the sweetness of its eternal home. And through love, it suffers, for love reminds it of what it once was, whole, eternal, undivided. But even in the midst of forgetfulness, the soul leaves breadcrumbs for itself. Moments of déjà vu, inexplicable longings, the strange nostalgia that comes when watching the sunset or hearing an ancient melody. These are not coincidences, they are the fingerprints of eternity. Some souls awaken sooner. They remember glimpses, so in art, in meditation, in silence. Others sleep through entire lifetimes, their eyes open, but their inner light dim, yet no soul is lost. All will remember in time, for time itself was made for remembering. The Egyptian Book of the Dead speaks to the soul wandering through the underworld, guided by the voice of wisdom. You are not a stranger here, for you have walked these halls before. So too does the human soul wander the corridors of this world, forgetting that the temples it builds and the wars it wages are but reflections of its own inner journey, the struggle between remembrance and forgetting, spirit and shadow, unity and division. And in this sacred drama, the soul learns its deepest truth, that to be human is to be divine in disguise, that every pain, every joy, every loss, and every love is a mirror, a reminder of the heavens it once called home. The descent was not the end of the journey. It was the beginning of awakening, for only when the divine spark lives within the darkness of flesh can it truly understand the meaning of light. Only when the eternal becomes mortal can it grasp the beauty of immortality. The soul came here not to escape heaven, but to bring heaven into matter, to remember its divinity through the very experience of being human, to walk through time and find the eternal hiding in the ordinary. And so, even as it forgets, it begins to remember. Through pain, it learns compassion. Through limitation, it discovers strength. Through separation, it finds love. The descent is not a fall. It is a dance between spirit and flesh, eternity and time, the infinite and the finite. And though the soul may forget the song it once knew, the rhythm never leaves. It beats beneath every heartbeat, whispers beneath every breath, calling the traveler to awaken, to remember, to rise again. The dream of life, the soul awakens inside the dream and calls it reality. It opens its eyes to light, breathes air, feels warmth, and believes this is all there is. The body becomes its new universe, the senses its new gods. What was once infinite becomes confined within walls of flesh and time. The ancients called this the great forgetting. Life itself is a veil woven of light and shadow, through which the soul walks as though in a trance. It chases the reflection of truth in the waters of illusion, mistaking the mirror for what it reflects. It gathers names, faces, memories, and beliefs, building a story around itself, a fragile kingdom of identity. It says, "This is who I am." But deep inside, a softer voice whispers, "You are so much more." The Egyptian priests taught that the world is a sacred illusion, Maya, the eternal play of forms. To the unawakened eye, it appears solid, binding, final. But to the awakened soul, it is a dream, a theater in which the divine learns to see itself in 1,000 faces. And so the soul walks through the corridors of life, believing it to be its home. It learns the language of survival, of desire, of ambition. It feels the ache of hunger, the thrill of discovery, the sting of betrayal. It reaches for what it thinks will fulfill it: love, wealth, power, knowledge, but none can fill the vast silence it carries within. That silence is the memory of eternity. Plato spoke of this longing, anamnesis, the remembering of what the soul once knew before birth. He said that all learning is but remembrance, and all desire is the echo of what was once divine. The soul does not seek new truths. It seeks to remember the truths it forgot. Yet the dream of life is powerful. The senses weave a web of enchantment, binding the soul to pleasure and pain alike. What was meant to be a temporary journey becomes a labyrinth. And so the soul begins to wander, to lose itself in the corridors of time. Some call this wandering the sleep of the soul. It walks through lifetimes, gathering experiences, but not understanding. It forgets that it is dreaming and becomes attached to the dream itself. The mystics of the East likened this to a bird trapped inside a mirror maze, chasing its reflection, never realizing that the exit lies not ahead, but within. But every dream has its cracks, and through those cracks the light begins to shine. In moments of silence, of awe, of love, or deep loss, the soul feels something stir, a memory, faint but undeniable. It may happen while watching the sunset bleed into the horizon, or while holding the hand of someone dying, or when gazing into the eyes of a stranger who feels inexplicably familiar. For an instant, the illusion fades, and the soul remembers, I have been here before. It remembers that every face it meets is a mirror, every joy and sorrow a lesson, every birth and death a rhythm in the eternal song. And yet, upon awakening, the world calls again, louder, hungrier, more demanding. The dream deepens and the soul must choose to sleep again or to begin the slow, painful path of remembering. Dante wrote in Divine Comedy, midway upon the journey of our life, I found myself within a dark forest, for the straightforward path had been lost. So too does the soul at the midpoint of its dream awaken to confusion, aware enough to sense the truth, but still lost in shadows. This is the moment of crisis, the crossroads between the slumbering self and the awakened being. Many turn away, frightened of the unknown, for to awaken is to die to the false self, to watch the identity built over years crumble into dust. But some, the seekers, the wounded, the lovers of truth, take the first trembling step inward. And in that step, the world begins to tremble. The dream starts to crack. The soul realizes that the world outside has never been separate from the world within, that every person encountered, every challenge faced, is a reflection of the soul's own state. Life is not something that happens to us. It is something that happens through us. The Egyptian sages said, as above, so below, as within, so without. The universe mirrors the soul, and the soul mirrors the universe. Every sunrise outside is the reflection of a sunrise within. Every storm in the sky mirrors a storm in the heart, and so the journey becomes sacred. The soul begins to live differently. It listens more deeply. It starts to notice the patterns, the symbols, the quiet guidance that life has always whispered. It sees that nothing has ever been random, that even pain was a teacher, disguised in darkness. The dream of life transforms from prison to pilgrimage. Every experience becomes a doorway, every loss a reminder of eternity, every breath a chance to remember. For life itself is not an obstacle to the soul's awakening. It is the path. The illusion is not meant to be escaped, but understood. The dream is not the enemy. It is the canvas upon which the divine paints its rediscovery of itself. And so, as the soul continues through this dream of life, it carries a faint memory, a light that flickers behind the eyes, a longing that no earthly joy can satisfy. It begins to sense that it is not living in time but through it, that every lifetime is but a page in a much greater story, one written by eternity, told through the lips of the finite. And when it finally pauses long enough to listen, truly listen, it hears the whisper once more. The same voice that called it before creation now speaks again, softly from within. Wake up, my child. You are dreaming. but you are dreaming the divine dream. And with that, something begins to shift. The walls of illusion tremble. The light grows stronger. The soul is beginning to awaken. The awakening. There comes a moment, quiet, almost imperceptible, when the veil begins to thin. It does not arrive with thunder or revelation, but as a whisper so soft that only the still heart can hear it. After lifetimes of dreaming, the soul stirs. Something ancient moves within, like a faint light flickering beneath the dust of centuries. At first, it is only a feeling, a sense that life is not what it seems. The familiar world begins to shimmer, as though it were a reflection on water, trembling in the wind. The soul begins to question, who am I? Why am I here? What is this dream I call life? And in the silence that follows, the first rays of remembrance break through. The mystics have called this the first dawn, for though the sun has not yet risen, its light can already be felt. The awakening soul is like a bird that remembers the sky before it has seen it, drawn upward by an unseen promise. In this sacred moment, pain becomes a teacher. Every sorrow that once felt meaningless begins to reveal its secret. The suffering that seemed cruel now glows with hidden purpose. The soul begins to understand that nothing was ever against it, that every shadow was a mirror guiding it toward the light. As the Sufi poet Rumi wrote, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." It is through that wound that the awakening begins. The soul, tired of the endless cycle of desires, begins to turn inward. It seeks silence, not as escape, but as remembrance. It begins to listen to the language it once knew, the language of being. In meditation, in solitude, in the still moments between breaths, it feels the presence of something eternal, not outside, but within. The same light that burns in the stars flickers behind the eyes. The same intelligence that governs galaxies moves in the rhythm of the heart. Plato said that the soul, upon remembering its divine origin, is seized with wonder and is overcome by a longing for the heavens. This longing is not of the mind, but of the essence, a pull back toward unity, a yearning to return to what was never truly lost. The Egyptians depicted this as the soul's heart being weighed against the feather of Ma'at, the measure of truth. When the heart is light, free from the burden of illusion and ignorance, it ascends. When it is heavy with attachment and fear, it sinks. But awakening is not judgment. It is recognition. The soul realizes that heaven and hell are not places beyond death, but states of being within life. Heaven is the remembrance of truth. Hell is the forgetting. And as the soul awakens, it begins to see both within itself. It recognizes that the demons it feared were its own shadows, fragments of forgotten light, longing to be seen. The angels it sought outside were the virtues sleeping in its own heart, and the God it worshipped in the sky was whispering quietly from within its own breath. The awakening is not the gaining of something new. It is the rediscovery of what has always been. It is like a mirror clearing of dust, revealing the reflection that was there all along. But awakening is not gentle. It demands death, not the death of the body, but the death of illusion. The false self, the identity built upon fear, possession, and separation, begins to dissolve. The soul watches as the structures it clung to collapse. Relationships shift, desires fade, certainties crumble. It feels naked, exposed, fragile, as though everything familiar has been stripped away. This is the threshold between sleep and awakening. the place mystics called the burning ground. Here the soul must walk through the fire of truth. It must face what it has run from, its own reflection. And yet, as it does, it discovers something astonishing. The fire does not burn, it purifies. It does not destroy, it reveals. In the silence that follows the flames, the soul feels lighter, freer. The chains it once mistook for safety now lie broken at its feet. It begins to breathe differently, not just air but presence. Every sound becomes sacred. Every moment becomes alive. Even the simplest act, touching the earth, seeing the sky, hearing a bird sing, carries an unspeakable beauty. The soul realizes that the divine has never been hidden. It was simply unseen. Dante in his Purgatorio wrote that as the soul climbs the mountain toward paradise, it must pass through fire to cleanse itself of earthly desires. But once through, he says, the stars reappear, symbols of divine memory returning to consciousness. So too does the awakening soul rediscover its stars, not in the sky, but within. Each star a truth remembered, each light a step homeward. And yet, awakening is not an ending, it is a beginning. The true journey has only just begun. For the soul, now aware of its divinity, must live in a world that has forgotten. It must carry light through darkness, compassion through cruelty, wisdom through chaos. It must remember what it is, even as the dream continues to whisper its illusions. But something has changed forever. The soul can no longer fully sleep. The memory has returned, not as knowledge, but as being. It walks through life differently now, softer, slower, with the awareness that every face it meets is a reflection of itself. It looks upon suffering and no longer despairs, for it sees purpose. It looks upon death and no longer fears, for it knows continuation. It looks upon itself and no longer doubts, for it feels eternity pulsing within. The awakening soul whispers quietly into the silence, I remember. I was never lost. I only dreamed I was. And from the depth of that remembrance, it begins to glow, not as a light that blinds, but as a warmth that heals. The world may not notice, but the heavens do. For every awakening soul becomes a beacon, lighting the path for others still dreaming. And so the circle continues. The one who remembers becomes the guide for those who have forgotten. The story of awakening is the story of every soul. It is the remembrance of what we have always been, the night of the soul. There is a silence deeper than all others, a darkness not of absence, but of transformation. It comes when the soul has glimpsed the divine, only to find that the light it sought has vanished. The world, once luminous with awakening, now turns to shadow. The heavens grow silent. The heart, once full, becomes empty. This is the night of the soul. Every seeker who has touched truth must pass through it, for awakening is not completion, it is invitation. The first light awakens the soul, but the darkness purifies it. St. John of the Cross called it La noche oscura del alma, the dark night of the soul, the passage through which the divine refines what still clings to illusion. The fire of awakening has burned away much, but not all. What remains must be surrendered, not by effort, but by trust. At first, the soul resists. It reaches for the familiar light, for the peace it once felt, but finds only silence. Prayer seems unanswered. Meditation feels empty. Meaning dissolves like smoke. The soul cries out, "Where have you gone?" Unaware that the one it seeks has not departed, but has entered more deeply, hidden beyond the senses. The mystics tell us that in this night God withdraws, the sweetness of his presence so the soul may love him purely without reward. It is here the soul learns to love the divine for what it is, not for what it gives. The darkness is mercy disguised as emptiness. Dante knew this path well. Having ascended from the infernal depths and glimpsed the mountain of purgation, he too found himself lost once more, guided only by faith through the last shadows of his own soul. Before he could reach the stars again, he had to face Beatrice, his mirror of divine love, and see reflected in her eyes all that he still was not. So too must every soul face itself, without mask, without story, without illusion. The night of the soul strips away every false light. It removes comfort, identity, even the sense of progress. It is the desert of being, where one walks alone without map, without direction, with nothing but the faint memory of the call that once began the journey. In this silence, the ego trembles. It cannot survive here. It was built from noise, from validation, from the illusion of control. The night exposes it, and in its dying breath, the soul feels pain so deep it believes it will shatter. But it does not shatter. It dissolves. And as it dissolves, something infinite awakens beneath it. Not the old light of understanding, but a light beyond opposites, beyond knowing. The Egyptians spoke of this stage as the weighing of the heart before Osiris. The heart, heavy with attachments, is placed upon the scale beside the feather of Ma'at, the symbol of truth. If the heart is heavy, it sinks back into the cycle of death and rebirth. But if it is light, purified of all illusion, it rises into eternity. The night of the soul is that weighing, the test of whether the heart can surrender all it clings to. The soul must release not only its pain, but its pride, its need to understand, even its attachment to the divine experience itself. Only when it releases everything, even the hope of light, does the dawn return. For dawn can only be seen by those who have walked through the longest night. The mystic Teresa of Avila once wrote, "The soul must journey through the desert so that it may learn to desire only the reign of God." And in that desert, the soul learns something that knowledge could never teach: trust. Not the trust of the mind, but of the essence, a surrender so complete that even the self dissolves. Here the soul no longer says, "I seek God," for even the I is gone. There is only the seeking itself, and within that the realization that the seeker and the sought were never two. The darkness, once feared, reveals its secret. It was not the absence of light, but the womb of it. The silence, once unbearable, becomes the voice of the eternal. The night of the soul is not punishment. It is the last purification, the death that precedes true birth. It is in this emptiness that the final illusion breaks, the illusion of separation. The soul realizes that it was never alone, never abandoned, never forgotten. That even in the deepest darkness, it was held, not by an external force, but by the very essence of its being. And then something shifts. Slowly, imperceptibly, the horizon begins to glow. A faint shimmer of dawn appears, not like the light before, but softer, purer. The soul, stripped bare, now sees with new eyes. It realizes that it was not walking toward the divine, it was walking within it all along. The Sufis said, "The seeker becomes the sought." The Egyptians said, "Thou art the God who made thyself." Dante, emerging from the final sphere, wrote simply, "And my will and my desire were turned by love, the love that moves the sun and the other stars." This is the end of the night, not a return to the old light, but the birth of a new one. a light that no longer comes and goes, for it is not found in vision or feeling, but in being itself. The soul stands reborn, silent, humble, radiant. The world it once feared, it now blesses. The pain it once resisted, it now understands. The darkness it once dreaded, it now thanks, for it was in that darkness that it met the truth of what it is. And as the first rays of dawn rise over the horizon of eternity, the soul whispers with a stillness that moves mountains. There was never darkness. There was only unrecognized light, the ascent and return. The darkness has lifted. What remains is silence, not the silence of emptiness, but of fullness, a stillness that hums with life, the quiet breathing of the infinite. The soul stands at the edge of time, and for the first time, there is no fear, no longing, no division. It remembers, not as memory, but as knowing. Not as an image of the divine, but as the divine itself. The journey that began with descent and forgetting now turns upward, not in space, but in consciousness. The ascent is not a flight to the heavens, but the dissolving of boundaries. Heaven is not a place above, but a state within, where all opposites collapse into one eternal now. The soul sees what it could never see before, that the descent, the dream, the darkness were never mistakes. They were movements of love, the infinite seeking to know itself through limitation, the timeless entering time to rediscover eternity. Every tear was a note in the divine symphony. Every shadow was light learning its own shape. Every death was life-changing form. Plato wrote that all the soul's striving, all its beauty and virtue, is but the desire to return to the realm of perfect being, to once again behold the eternal forms. Yet now, the awakened soul sees that the eternal was never elsewhere. It was hidden in the dust, in the body, in every fleeting moment. The divine had never left. The soul had never fallen. It only dreamed that it had. The ascent, then, is not movement. It is recognition. The mystics said that when the soul is fully awake, it no longer travels toward God, for it realizes it has always been within God. The wave does not reach the ocean. It remembers it is the ocean. The Egyptian Book of the Dead called this the coming forth by light. After passing through judgment, purification, and remembrance, the soul stands radiant, one with Ra, the sun, sailing across the eternal sky. The dead are no longer dead. They have become living light. And so too does the soul rise, not upward but inward, into the vast expanse of its own divine essence. It looks upon the world one last time, the rivers, the mountains, the faces it once loved, and realizes that they were never outside of it. They were reflections, expressions of its own being. The beloved it sought was itself mirrored in form. As the final veil lifts, the soul sees through the illusion of separation completely. The divine and the human, heaven and earth, birth and death, all dissolve into one boundless radiance. There is no I and thou. There is only I am. This is the return, not to a place, but to the origin beyond origin. The silence before creation now sings. The light before the stars now burns within every star. The soul, once a traveler, is now the journey itself. Dante, in the final canto of the Paradiso, stood before the blinding vision of the divine and wrote, "My sight was bounded by the infinite light." But this was not a light distinct from me. It was the love that moves the sun and the other stars. That is the soul's final realization, that love was the thread through every shadow, every loss, every life. Love was the hidden architect of the labyrinth, the whisper before creation, the fire of awakening, the silence of the night. And now, love reveals itself as the only truth that ever was. The soul no longer seeks to understand, for there is no separation left to bridge. The knower and the known have merged. The question and the answer are one. There is no longer birth, no longer death, only transformation, endless and divine. The light that once felt distant now radiates from within all things. The breath that once felt personal now moves through the whole of existence. The soul that once wandered alone now sings as part of the infinite chorus. And in that song, it recognizes every other soul, the countless travelers it met through lifetimes and ages, all returning to the same source. Every voice, every heart, every spark, merging back into the one eternal flame. Nothing is lost. Nothing ever was. The soul whispers, "I am home," but the universe answers, "You never left." It is here that the story ends, or rather begins again. For the journey of the soul is a circle without circumference, an endless breathing in and out of God. Each soul that returns inspires another to awaken, each awakening lighting another star in the firmament of eternity. And as the divine inhales creation once more, the soul rests, not as a drop apart from the ocean, but as the ocean knowing itself as every drop. The silence before creation has become music again, and the music sings, "You are eternal, you are infinite, you are the dreamer and the dream. You are the soul, the traveler through time, the light within the dark, the whisper before the world began, the breath of eternity." Sit now in stillness and listen. The journey is not outside you. It never was. The same path you have just heard lies within your own being. The descent, the dream, the awakening, the night, and the return. Close your eyes and breathe. The breath you take is the same breath that moved through the first star, the same breath that carried the souls of pharaohs, poets, and prophets. You are older than you think, deeper than you know, and closer to the divine than your thoughts can grasp. You were born from silence. You will return to silence. And in between, you are the song that silence sings to know itself. So when you walk through life again, walk gently, for every face you meet is a reflection of your own. When you love, love deeply, for through love, you remember what you truly are. And when you suffer, remember, even in darkness, the soul is never lost. It is learning to see. The journey of the soul is the journey of God remembering himself, and through you, that remembering continues. So breathe again and listen. The whisper before creation still speaks. It says, "Awaken, my child. You were never bound. You were never lost. You are the eternal flame that lights the darkness. You are the soul, timeless, infinite, divine." And in that breath, the circle closes and opens once more. And so, the journey ends where it began, not in the stars, not in the dust, but within you. You are the traveler. You are the story. You are the whisper that has echoed through eternity, searching for itself in the mirror of time. If you felt something awaken within you while listening to this, a memory, a silence, a spark, it is not by chance. It is your soul remembering. Because every story told here is not ancient history, it is your history. You have walked these paths before, through the temples of Egypt, through the fields of Greece, through the shadows of Dante's Inferno, through the silence of your own heart. You have descended and risen countless times only to remember what the mystics always knew, that the soul is eternal, and every lifetime is a single breath in the lungs of God. And as you listen now, you are awakening again. And so if this story spoke to you, stay. This is not the end. It is the beginning of remembrance. Subscribe to the Journey Back in Time. Here we wander through the forgotten corridors of existence where myth, philosophy, and spirit converge. Here we remember what the world has forgotten. Each story is a mirror of your own becoming, a piece of the soul's eternal puzzle. If the light of this story touched you, share it, not just with others, but with yourself. Revisit it when the world grows loud. Let its silence remind you of what you are, because this is more than a channel. It is a journey, a pilgrimage through consciousness, a return to the divine essence hidden within all things. So close your eyes one last time. Breathe and listen. The whisper before creation still speaks, and it speaks through you. Awaken, traveler. You are the soul, and your journey back in time has only just begun.